Christmas morning in our little house on Maple Street started like any other holiday. Coffee brewing, Ayla humming while she arranged presents under our artificial tree, and me wondering how we'd gotten so good at pretending everything was perfect. I'm Zane Merrinor, and I fix things for a living. Air conditioners, furnaces, the occasional plumbing disaster. It's honest work in a town that's forgotten what honest looks like. Millbrook, New York used to make things. Textiles, machinery, hope. Now it makes excuses and gossip. Zane, come see what Ellie sent from college, Ayla called from the living room. My wife of 22 years stood there in her red Christmas sweater, the one that made her look like she belonged in a holiday catalog. At 45, she still turned heads at the country club where she worked in human resources. Mine included most days. Ellie's package contained the usual college care package reversal. Cookies she'd baked in her dorm, a coffee mug with "World's Best Dad" printed on it, and a photo of her with some boy I'd never met. She looked happy. That mattered more than anything. Sweet kid, I said, meaning it. Ellie had always been the bright spot in our marriage, the thing that kept us tethered when everything else felt like it was drifting. She gets that from me, Ayla said, then caught herself. I mean, from both of us? Strange thing to clarify, but I let it slide. Marriage teaches you to pick your battles. I'd been planning this Christmas surprise for weeks. 3 DNA ancestry kits, the kind that promise to unlock family mysteries and connect you with long-lost relatives. Seemed harmless enough. Educational, even. I got us something special this year, I announced, pulling the wrapped packages from behind the couch. Ayla's smile flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. 22 years of marriage teaches you to read the micro-expressions, the tiny tells that reveal what's really going on behind the holiday cheer. What's this? She asked, accepting her package with the enthusiasm of someone receiving a jury summons. Open it and find out. She tore the paper carefully, the way she did everything. Measured, controlled, perfect. When she saw the DNA kit, her face went through a series of changes that would have been comical if they weren't so unsettling. Confusion, recognition, then something that looked suspiciously like panic. DNA tests, she said flatly. Ancestry kits, I corrected. Thought it might be fun to learn about our family histories. Maybe find some distant cousins or something. Ayla set the box down like it contained explosives. Zane, these things are invasive. They sell your genetic information to insurance companies. That's a myth. I researched it. Did you research how they've ruined families? People finding out things they never wanted to know? The room felt smaller suddenly. What kind of things? She stood up, smoothing her sweater. Family secrets. Affairs. Children who aren't who they think they are. Some stones are better left unturned. We don't have any family secrets, I said, watching her face carefully. Everyone has secrets, Zane. The way she said it made something cold settle in my stomach. Not fear, exactly. More like the feeling you get when you're working on a furnace and hear a sound that shouldn't be there. A warning that something's about to go wrong. So you don't want to do it? Ayla picked up her coffee mug, gripping it like a lifeline. If you send those tests, I'll file for divorce. Family secrets should stay in the family. The threat hung in the air between us like smoke. 22 years of marriage, and she'd never mentioned divorce. Not during my drinking phase in my 30s. Not when money got tight after the factory closed. Not even when I'd been stupid enough to let my eyes wander to Jenny Morrison at the hardware store. But a simple DNA test? That was grounds for ending our marriage? Okay, I said. Relief washed over her features. Good. I'm going to start dinner prep. She gathered the kits and headed for the kitchen, probably planning to throw them in the garbage. I waited until I heard her running water, then quietly followed. Ayla stood at the sink, staring out the window at our neighbor's house. Mrs. Dorsey was visible through her kitchen window, probably already working on her famous Christmas ham. The woman saw everything that happened on our street. Sometimes I wondered if she kept a log. You okay? I asked. Ayla startled. Fine, just thinking about how much work dinner's going to be. I could call Darren, see if he wants to come over. Haven't seen my brother in a while. Another micro-expression, this one harder to read. He's probably busy. On Christmas, guy's got no family except us. Right, of course. She turned back to the window. Sure, call him. I pulled out my phone and dialed Darren's number. My younger brother had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of trouble or into someone's good graces. He'd never married, claimed he was waiting for the right woman. At 42, he was still looking. Merry Christmas, big brother. Darren's voice boomed through the phone. Same to you. Want to come over for dinner? Ayla's making her famous roast. A pause. I don't know, Zane. Don't want to intrude on family time. You are family, moron. Let me think about it. I'll call you back. He hung up before I could respond. Strange. Darren never turned down a free meal, especially one of Ayla's. The man could charm the paint off a fence, but he couldn't cook to save his life. I found Ayla in the pantry, pulling ingredients for dinner. The DNA kits sat on the counter, still in their boxes. Darren's being weird, I said, acting like he doesn't want to come over. Maybe he has plans. Since when does Darren have Christmas plans? She emerged from the pantry with an armload of spices. People change, Zane. Maybe he's seeing someone. He'd tell me if he was seeing someone. We tell each other everything. Ayla's laugh had an edge to it. Men never tell each other everything. After she went upstairs to change clothes, I stood in the kitchen looking at those DNA kits. 3 innocent boxes that had somehow become the center of a domestic storm. What was Ayla so afraid of? What family secrets could possibly be worth threatening divorce over? I thought about my own family history. Dad had been a mechanic, Mom a school secretary. Both gone now, but they'd lived simple, honest lives. No scandals, no mysteries. Darren and I had grown up in the same house, gone to the same schools, shared the same friends. Ayla's family was equally unremarkable. Her parents lived in Florida now, sent cards on birthdays and holidays. Her sister lived in California, worked in marketing for some tech company. Normal people living normal lives. So what was she hiding? The rational part of my brain said to let it go. Marriage was about trust, and if Ayla didn't want to take the test, that was her choice. But the part of me that made a living finding problems and fixing them couldn't let it rest. I picked up the first kit and read the instructions. Simple enough. Spit in a tube, mail it back, wait for results. The whole process would take 6 to 8 weeks. Ayla's footsteps on the stairs made me put the kit down. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, the kind of casual outfit that somehow looked expensive on her. Working at the country club had refined her taste over the years. She fit in with the wealthy members better than I fit in anywhere. I'm going to run to the store, she announced. Forgot cranberry sauce. I'll come with you. No need, I'll be quick. She grabbed her purse and keys, pausing at the door. Zane, about those tests. I know I seemed upset, but it's just, some things are better left alone. You understand, right? Sure, I lied. After her car pulled out of the driveway, I sat at the kitchen table and really looked at those kits for the first time. The packaging promised to unlock family mysteries, connect you with relatives you never knew existed, trace your ancestry back centuries. What if Ayla was right? What if some secrets were better left buried? But what if she was wrong? I opened my laptop and created a new email account. Then I registered all 3 kits under that address, mine, Ayla's, and one I'd planned to send to Ellie at college. If Ayla was hiding something, I needed to know what it was. The post office was closed for Christmas, but they had a drop box outside. I could mail the kits tonight, and Ayla would never know until it was too late. My phone buzzed with a text from Darren. Changed my mind about dinner. See you around 4? I texted back, looking forward to it. But as I sealed the DNA kits in their prepaid envelopes, I wondered if that was true. Something told me this Christmas was about to become memorable for all the wrong reasons. Darren arrived at 4:30 with a bottle of wine and his usual easy smile. My brother had always been the better-looking one, taller, broader shoulders, the kind of jaw that belonged in toothpaste commercials. He worked construction when the mood struck him, but mostly he got by on charm and the occasional poker game. Sorry I'm late, he said, hugging Ayla a little longer than necessary. Traffic was crazy. On Christmas Day? I asked. In Millbrook? You know how it is, everyone rushing around. Ayla took his coat, her cheeks slightly flushed. Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you 2 catch up while I finish in the kitchen? We settled in the living room with beers. Darren seemed restless, checking his phone every few minutes. Hot date tonight? I asked. Something like that. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. How's business? Slow, always is in winter. People don't think about their air conditioning until it's 90 degrees outside. You should expand, maybe get into plumbing full-time. With what money? Darren shrugged. Ayla's doing well at the club. Maybe she could. I'm not asking my wife to finance my business expansion. Pride's expensive, Zane. So is dignity. We drank in silence for a while. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Ayla moving around, preparing dinner with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She looked happy, content. Nothing like the woman who'd threatened divorce over DNA tests a few hours earlier. Remember when we were kids? Darren said suddenly. And Mom used to make us promise to always look out for each other? Yeah, why? Just thinking about family, how important it is. He took a long pull from his beer. You ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices? Every day, but we can't change the past. No, he said quietly, but we can learn from it. Dinner was Ayla's usual masterpiece. Roast beef with all the trimmings, conversation flowing as smoothly as the wine, but I kept noticing little things. The way she and Darren seemed to anticipate each other's movements when passing dishes. How they both reached for the salt at the same time, then laughed like it was some private joke. Ellie called while you were out, I told Ayla. Wanted to wish everyone Merry Christmas. Oh, I'm sorry I missed her. How's she doing? Good. Mentioned she might bring someone home for spring break. Darren choked on his wine. Someone? A boy from her psychology class. That's nice, Ayla said, but her smile seemed forced. She's growing up so fast. 20 years old. Not exactly a child anymore. She'll always be my little girl, Ayla said, then caught herself again. Our little girl. There was that strange clarification again, like she had to remind herself that Ellie belonged to both of us. After dinner, Darren helped clear the table while I loaded the dishwasher. Normal domestic choreography, except for the way he seemed to know where everything belonged in our kitchen. I should head out, he announced around 8 o'clock. Stay for coffee, Ayla said quickly. I made that pecan pie you like. Rain check? Early day tomorrow. Since when do you work the day after Christmas? I asked. New client, big renovation project. He grabbed his coat. Thanks for dinner. It was perfect, as always. He hugged Ayla goodbye, and I caught something that made my stomach tighten. His hand lingered on her lower back just for a second, the kind of touch that spoke of familiarity. After he left, Ayla seemed deflated. She moved through the house, straightening things that didn't need straightening, avoiding eye contact. Good dinner, I said. Thanks. Darren seemed off tonight. Did he? I didn't notice. But she had noticed. I could tell by the way she busied herself with unnecessary tasks, the way she kept glancing at her phone. Later that night, while Ayla showered, I did something I'd never done in 22 years of marriage. I looked through her phone. Her text messages were mostly mundane, conversations with coworkers, reminders about appointments, grocery lists. But there was one thread that made my hands shake. The contact was listed as D, and the messages went back months. D, can't stop thinking about last night. Ayla, me neither. But we have to be careful. D, when can I see you again? Ayla, Thursday, same place. D, I love you. Ayla, I know, this is so complicated. The most recent message was from this afternoon, while Ayla was supposedly at the store buying cranberry sauce. D, tonight was torture, pretending not to want you. Ayla, I felt the same way. Soon, I promise. I set the phone down with trembling hands. 22 years of marriage, and my wife was having an affair, with someone whose name started with D. Darren. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. His reluctance to come to dinner, the way they'd moved around each other in the kitchen, the lingering touches, the inside jokes. My wife was sleeping with my brother. I sat on the edge of our bed, listening to the shower run, and tried to process what I'd discovered. Part of me wanted to storm into the bathroom and confront her immediately. But a larger part, the part that fixed things for a living, wanted to understand the full scope of the problem before I started tearing everything apart. How long had this been going on? Was Ellie aware of it? Did other people know? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? The shower stopped. I quickly put Ayla's phone back where I'd found it and pretended to be reading a magazine when she emerged from the bathroom. Good shower? I asked, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. I'm exhausted. She climbed into bed beside me, smelling of lavender soap and betrayal. Thanks for a nice Christmas, Zane. Thank you, too. She kissed my cheek, the same casual goodnight kiss she'd given me thousands of times before. Except now I knew where those lips had been. Ayla? Yeah? About those DNA tests. You seemed really upset about them. She went still beside me. I told you. Some things are better left alone. But what if there's nothing to hide? What if they just confirm what we already know about our families? Then there's no point in taking them, is there? Unless there is something to hide. She rolled over to face me, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Are you accusing me of something? Should I be? For a long moment we stared at each other across the small distance that had somehow become an ocean. No, she said finally. You shouldn't be. But we both knew she was lying. I waited until her breathing became deep and regular, then slipped out of bed. The DNA kits were still sitting on the kitchen counter where I'd left them. I gathered them up, along with my car keys, and drove to the post office. The Dropbox stood like a silent sentinel in the empty parking lot. I held the 3 envelopes for a long moment, thinking about Ayla's threat. If you send those tests, I'll file for divorce. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. I dropped the envelopes through the slot and heard them hit the bottom of the box with a soft thud. Whatever secrets my family was hiding, they wouldn't stay buried much longer. As I drove home through the empty streets of Millbrook, I started planning. If Ayla wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real game looked like. But first, I needed proof. Real evidence, not just suspicious text messages and lingering touches. I needed to catch them in the act. The next morning, Ayla was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter explained she'd gone to the gym, then grocery shopping, her usual post-holiday routine. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, studying her note. The handwriting looked the same as always, neat, controlled, giving nothing away. How long had she been living this double life? How had I missed the signs? My phone rang. Darren's name appeared on the screen. "Morning, brother," he said, sounding more cheerful than he had yesterday. "Morning, what's up?" "Wanted to thank you again for dinner, and apologize if I seemed distracted. Everything okay?" "Yeah, just, you know how the holidays can be, emotional." "Sure." I waited, but he didn't elaborate. "So this new construction job, what kind of renovation?" A pause. "Kitchen remodel. Big house over on Elm Street." Elm Street was where the country club members lived. Big houses, bigger bank accounts. Anyone I know? Doubt it. Rich folks. You know how they are. But I was already wondering if there was a rich woman involved, someone who might explain Darren's sudden need for privacy. After he hung up, I drove to my shop. Merrinor Heating and Cooling occupied a small building on the edge of town's industrial district. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd built the business from nothing after the textile factory closed, one service call at a time. My partner Jake was already there, working on a furnace that had come in over the weekend. "How was Christmas?" he asked without looking up from his work. "Interesting." Good interesting or bad interesting? Still figuring that out. Jake had been my friend since high school. He knew me well enough to recognize when something was wrong, but smart enough not to push when I wasn't ready to talk. I spent the morning catching up on paperwork and trying not to think about Ayla and Darren. But every time my phone buzzed with a text message, my pulse spiked. None of them were from my wife. Around noon, I decided to drive past the country club. Ayla's car was in the parking lot, which meant she was at work like she was supposed to be. Normal Tuesday routine. I was about to leave when I spotted Darren's pickup truck parked across the street at Murphy's Diner. Strange. What was he doing in this part of town if his construction job was on Elm Street? I parked and walked into the diner. Darren sat in a corner booth, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I approached, and for just a second, I saw something like guilt flash across his face. "Zane, what brings you here?" "Lunch meeting with a potential client." The lie came easily. "What about you? Thought you were working on Elm Street." "Taking a break. This place has the best coffee in town." I slid into the booth across from him. "Mind if I join you?" Of course not. But he did mind. I could tell by the way he kept checking his phone, the way his eyes drifted toward the window that offered a clear view of the country club parking lot. "So tell me about this construction job," I said. "Kitchen remodel, right?" "Right. Complete gut renovation, new cabinets, countertops, appliances. The works." "Sounds expensive?" "Money's no object for these people." "Must be nice. What's the timeline?" Darren shifted in his seat. "Few months, probably. Depends on permits and inspections." "You pulling permits through the city?" "Yeah, of course." But something in his voice told me he was making it up as he went along. I'd heard that tone before, usually when Darren was trying to talk his way out of trouble. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone buzzed with a text from Ayla. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I showed Darren the message. "Looks like I'm on my own for dinner." "Busy time of year at the club," he said. "Lots of year-end events." "You seem to know a lot about Ayla's work schedule. She mentions it sometimes. When we talk?" "When do you two talk?" Another shift in his seat. "You know, family gatherings, holidays." "Right." I finished my coffee and stood to leave. "Well, good luck with the kitchen remodel." "Thanks." As I walked toward the door, I glanced back and saw Darren typing furiously on his phone, probably letting someone know about our unexpected encounter. I sat in my truck across the street and waited. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, Ayla emerged from the country club and walked to her car. Instead of heading home or to the grocery store, she drove toward the other side of town. I followed at a distance, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She pulled into the parking lot of the Millbrook Motor Inn, a rundown motel that catered to traveling salesmen and people who needed privacy. Darren's pickup truck was already there. I parked behind a dumpster and watched as Ayla knocked on the door of room 237. Darren answered, pulling her inside quickly. The curtains were already drawn. So there it was, proof positive that my wife was cheating on me with my brother, in a cheap motel room like characters from some tawdry television drama. I sat in my truck for an hour, watching that closed door, trying to decide what to feel. Anger seemed like the obvious choice, but mostly I felt hollow, empty, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that mattered. When they finally emerged, Ayla looked around nervously before getting into her car. Darren waited until she'd driven away before coming outside. He lit a cigarette and leaned against his truck, looking satisfied with himself. I started my engine and drove home, taking the long way to avoid crossing paths with either of them. The house felt different when I walked inside. Not like home anymore, more like a crime scene. Ayla's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten to close it in her hurry to meet Darren. The screen showed her email inbox, and I could see several messages from someone named D. Halloway. Darren Halloway. My brother's full name. I clicked on the most recent message. Can't wait to see you tonight. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about telling Zane. Maybe it's time. Ayla's reply. Not yet. I need more time to figure out how to handle this. Ellie doesn't know anything, and I want to keep it that way until we decide what we're doing. Darren. I'm tired of sneaking around. I love you, and I want the world to know it. Ayla. I love you too, but this is complicated. Zane doesn't deserve to be hurt like this. Darren. He's going to find out eventually. Better it comes from us. The email thread went back months. Love letters, meeting arrangements, discussions about their future together. They'd been planning this for a long time. I scrolled down to the earliest messages and found the one that made my stomach drop. Darren. I keep thinking about that night after Ellie's graduation party, when you said you'd always wondered what it would be like between us. Ayla. I shouldn't have said that. I was emotional. Darren. But you meant it. I could see it in your eyes. Ayla. This is dangerous territory. Darren. The best territories usually are. Ellie's graduation party. That was almost 2 years ago. They'd been carrying on behind my back for 2 years, and I'd been completely oblivious. I heard Ayla's car in the driveway and quickly closed the laptop. When she walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading a magazine, the picture of domestic normalcy. How was work? I asked. Exhausting. End-of-year reports are due, and everyone's behind. She kissed the top of my head, the same casual gesture she'd performed thousands of times. Did you eat? Grabbed something at the diner. Which diner? Murphy's. A flicker of something crossed her face. Oh, did you see anyone we know? Darren was there, said he's working on some big renovation project. That's nice. Good for him. She moved around the kitchen, preparing a light dinner for herself, chatting about her day at work. If I hadn't seen her coming out of that motel room, I'd never have suspected anything was wrong. Ayla? Do you ever think about what our lives might have been like if we'd made different choices? She paused in her dinner preparation. What kind of different choices? I don't know. Different careers, different places to live, different people to marry. That's a strange question. Just curious. She turned to face me, studying my expression. Are you unhappy, Zane? Are you? I asked first. Some days, I admitted. But I thought that was normal. 22 years is a long time to be with one person. It is. She sat down across from me. But we've built something good here. A family, a life. That has to count for something. Even if it's built on lies? Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What lies? I don't know. You tell me. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between us like a storm cloud. I think you're being paranoid, she said finally. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally paying attention. That night, I lay awake listening to Ayla breathe beside me, wondering how many other nights she'd lain there thinking about my brother. How many times had she compared us? How many times had she wished she was somewhere else? The DNA test results would take 6 to 8 weeks to arrive, but I already knew what they were going to reveal. The question wasn't whether Ayla was hiding something. The question was how much, and what I was going to do about it. I thought about confronting them directly, but that seemed too simple, too easy. They'd been lying to me for 2 years. They deserved something more creative than a straightforward confrontation. They deserved to understand what it felt like to have their world turned upside down. I started documenting everything: times, dates, locations, every suspicious phone call, every unexplained absence, every lie disguised as casual conversation. If Ayla and Darren wanted to play games, I'd make sure I understood all the rules. Wednesday morning, Ayla announced she had to work late again. Big event planning meeting, she explained over coffee. The club's hosting a New Year's Eve gala, and there are a million details to coordinate. Sounds stressful. It is, but the overtime pay will be nice. Another lie. I'd called the country club yesterday, pretending to be interested in booking an event. The woman who answered told me they weren't planning any New Year's activities this year. Budget cuts. After Ayla left for work, I drove to the library and used their computers to do some research. It amazed me how much information was available if you knew where to look. Public records, social media profiles, even property records. Darren had been busier than I'd realized. His construction business, such as it was, had been struggling for months. He'd defaulted on his truck loan twice this year and was behind on rent for his apartment. Not exactly the profile of someone landing big renovation contracts, but he'd been spending money. New clothes, dinners at expensive restaurants, a weekend trip to Atlantic City last month. Where was that money coming from? I thought about Ayla's recent behavior. The new clothes she'd bought, claiming they were necessary for her job. The manicures and hair appointments that had become more frequent. The way she'd started talking about investing in herself. Was she giving Darren money? Funding their affair with our joint savings? I drove to the bank and asked to review our account statements. What I found made my hands shake with rage. Over the past 6 months, Ayla had withdrawn almost $15,000 in cash. Small amounts spread out over time, but it added up to serious money. Is there a problem with these transactions? The bank manager asked. No problem, I lied. Just reviewing our expenses. But there was a huge problem. Ayla had been systematically draining our savings account to fund her relationship with my brother. Money I'd earned fixing air conditioners and furnaces, squirreled away for Ellie's education and our retirement, was paying for motel rooms and romantic dinners. I needed more evidence before I made my move. Something undeniable, something that would expose them both for what they really were. That afternoon, I bought a small digital camera from the electronics store, the kind used for security systems with night vision capability and motion sensors. If they were going to keep meeting at the Millbrook Motor Inn, I wanted proof. Setting up surveillance felt surreal, like something from a private detective novel, not my actual life. But I positioned the camera across the street from the motel, hidden behind a dumpster with a clear view of room 237. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Thursday evening, right on schedule, both vehicles pulled into the motel parking lot within minutes of each other. They'd gotten careless, or maybe they just didn't care anymore about being discreet. The camera captured everything. Darren booking the room, Ayla arriving 20 minutes later, both of them disappearing inside for 2 hours. When they emerged, Darren kissed her goodbye in full view of the parking lot. I had them. But having proof and knowing what to do with it were two different things. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, to throw the evidence in their faces and demand explanations. But a larger part wanted something more satisfying than a simple confrontation. I wanted them to experience the same humiliation they'd put me through, the same sense of betrayal, the same feeling of having your world collapse around you. I wanted revenge. Friday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day planning. If I was going to destroy their relationship, I needed to be smart about it. Methodical. Complete. First, I created fake social media accounts and started gathering information about their friends, their coworkers, their social circles. If I was going to expose them, I wanted maximum impact. Then I visited a lawyer, not to file for divorce yet, but to understand my options. What I learned was encouraging. With proof of adultery, I'd have significant advantages in any divorce proceedings, especially if I could prove Ayla had been using marital assets to fund the affair. Document everything, the lawyer advised. Financial records, communications, evidence of the relationship. The more proof you have, the better your position. I was already ahead of him on that front. That evening, Ayla came home in an unusually good mood. She hummed while making dinner, smiled at nothing, generally acted like a woman in love. Which she was, just not with me. Good day at work? I asked. Very good. We finalized the plans for the spring fundraiser. It's going to be beautiful. Another lie. I'd called the club again that afternoon. There was no spring fundraiser in the planning stages. That's great. When is it? April, probably. Still working out the details. Will I be invited? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Of course. You're my husband. Right. Your husband. Something in my tone made her look at me more carefully. Are you feeling okay? You seem different lately. Different how? I don't know. Distant. Like you're thinking about something else. I am thinking about something else. What? Family secrets. Her smile faded. Not this again. Those DNA tests should arrive in a few weeks. Aren't you curious about what they'll show? I told you. Some things are better left alone. And I told you, we don't have any family secrets. Everyone has secrets, Zane. Do you? The question hung in the air between us. Ayla set down her wine glass and studied my face. What's this really about? I'm just trying to understand why my wife is so afraid of a simple genetic test. I'm not afraid. I'm practical. Those tests cause more problems than they solve. What kind of problems? The kind that destroy families. Maybe some families deserve to be destroyed. She went very still. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just thinking out loud. But we both knew it meant something. The conversation felt like a chess match, each of us probing for weaknesses, testing defenses. I'm going to bed, Ayla announced. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Another work meeting? Yes, another work meeting. She kissed my forehead and headed upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running, then checked her phone again. New messages from D. Halloway. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I have something special planned. Ayla's reply? What kind of something? You'll see, trust me. I always trust you. I love you. I love you too. Reading those words felt like swallowing broken glass. My wife telling another man she loved him, making plans for secret meetings, building a relationship that excluded me completely, but it also fueled my determination. They wanted to play games? Fine. I'd show them what a real game looked like. I spent the weekend preparing my next move. The DNA results would provide the final piece of evidence I needed, but I didn't have to wait for them to start applying pressure. Monday morning, I made an anonymous call to the country club's general manager. I thought you should know, I said, disguising my voice. One of your employees has been falsifying timesheets, claiming to work late when she's actually meeting someone at the Millbrook Motor Inn. Who is this? Someone who believes in honesty. I hung up before he could ask more questions. Then I called Darren's landlord. Just wanted to let you know your tenant in apartment 3B has been having loud parties during the week. Thought you might want to look into it. Darren Halloway. That doesn't sound like him. People change, I said, and hung up. Small moves, but they would create pressure, make them nervous, force them to look over their shoulders and wonder who was watching. Because someone was watching, someone who knew all their secrets and was planning to use them. The game had begun. By Tuesday morning, my anonymous tips had started bearing fruit. Ayla came home from work looking stressed and distracted. Everything okay? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Fine, just some personnel issues at work. What kind of personnel issues? Nothing serious. Someone complained about employee conduct, so management's doing random schedule reviews. She tried to sound casual, but I could hear the worry in her voice. The country club took their reputation seriously. Any hint of impropriety among staff members would be investigated thoroughly. That sounds uncomfortable. It's probably nothing, just some troublemaker trying to cause problems. If only she knew how right she was. Wednesday brought more pressure. Darren called while Ayla was at work, sounding agitated. Zane, you know anyone who might have it out for me? What do you mean? My landlord got some complaint about noise, says I've been having parties, disturbing other tenants. Have you? Of course not. You know I keep to myself. That was true. Darren's social life had always been limited, which made sense now. Hard to maintain friendships when you're spending all your time sneaking around with your brother's wife. Maybe someone got the wrong apartment number, I suggested. Maybe, but it's weird, you know? First the landlord, then my truck payment gets flagged for review, like someone's trying to mess with my life. Paranoid much? I'm serious, Zane. Something's going on. Want me to ask around, see if anyone's heard anything? Would you? I'd appreciate it. Sure thing, brother. The irony wasn't lost on me. Darren asking me to investigate the very harassment campaign I was orchestrating against him. That evening, Ayla seemed more nervous than usual. She kept checking her phone, jumping at small noises, generally acting like someone with a guilty conscience. You seem on edge, I observed. Just tired. Work's been stressful lately. The personnel investigation? Among other things. What other things? She hesitated. There are rumors going around about staff members having inappropriate relationships. What kind of inappropriate relationships? I don't know. Office gossip. You know how people talk. But I could see the fear in her eyes. Someone was asking questions, and she didn't know how much they knew or what they might discover. Well, you don't have anything to worry about, I said. You're married, happily married? Right, of course. Thursday morning brought the next phase of my campaign. I'd spent hours crafting an anonymous email that I sent to Ayla's supervisor, the country club's board of directors, and several prominent members. The email contained carefully edited surveillance photos from the motel, showing Ayla and an unidentified man entering and leaving room 237. The images were grainy enough to maintain some deniability, but clear enough to raise serious questions about employee conduct. I also included copies of bank records showing the cash withdrawals, with a note suggesting someone might be embezzling funds to finance personal activities. The response was immediate. Ayla's phone started ringing before 9 a.m. I have to go in early, she announced, grabbing her purse and keys. There's some kind of emergency meeting. On Thursday? That's unusual. Tell me about it. She left without her usual goodbye kiss, too distracted to maintain normal routines. I waited an hour, then drove to the country club. Ayla's car was in the parking lot, along with several others I recognized as belonging to board members. Through the windows, I could see people in suits having animated discussions. My phone buzzed with a text from Darren. Something's wrong. Ayla's not answering her phone. I texted back, maybe she's busy at work? This is different. She always answers my texts. I'm sure it's fine. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. Around noon, Ayla finally came home. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she set down her purse. How was the emergency meeting? I asked. Horrible. She slumped into a kitchen chair. Someone's been spreading rumors about me. Lies about my conduct and my finances. What kind of lies? They think I'm stealing money, and they have photos of me at some motel claiming I'm having an affair. Are you? The question came out before I could stop it. Direct, unfiltered, hanging in the air like an accusation. Am I what? Having an affair. She stared at me for a long moment. How can you even ask me that? Because my wife is being investigated for embezzlement and adultery. It seems like a reasonable question. Those photos could be of anyone, and the financial records are obviously doctored. So, you're saying someone is deliberately trying to frame you? That's exactly what I'm saying. Who would do something like that? I don't know. Someone who wants to hurt me, hurt us. Any idea why? She shook her head, but I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out who knew about her and Darren, who might have evidence, who might want revenge. What did you tell your supervisor? The truth, that I'm being harassed by someone with a grudge. Did they believe you? I think so, but they're launching a formal investigation. Until it's resolved, I'm suspended without pay. Perfect. The financial pressure would make everything worse, force them to make desperate decisions. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it in a way she couldn't understand. This is going to get worse before it gets better, she said quietly. She had no idea how right she was. That afternoon, Darren showed up unannounced. He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said. About what? About what's happening to Ayla. Someone's targeting her, and I think they might come after me next. Why would anyone come after you? He hesitated, and I could see him calculating how much to reveal. We're close. Ayla and me. If someone's trying to hurt her, they might try to hurt me too. How close? Close enough? That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. We stood in my living room, two brothers with a lifetime of shared history, staring at each other across a gulf of lies and betrayal. Maybe you should stay away from her for a while, I suggested, until this blows over. I can't do that. Why not? Because I love her. There it was. The admission I'd been waiting for. Darren loved my wife, and he wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Does she love you? Yes. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me. He ran a hand through his hair. 2 years, maybe longer. We tried to fight it, but you decided my feelings didn't matter. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're screwing my wife, and you've been lying to me about it. Zane, get out. Let me explain. Get out of my house. He left without another word, but I knew he'd be back. Love made people do stupid things, and Darren was already proving that point. That evening, Ayla tried to act normal. She cooked dinner, made small talk, pretended everything was fine. but I could see the cracks in her facade. The investigation had shaken her, and she didn't know what was coming next. Neither did I, exactly. But I knew it would be worse than anything she was imagining. The DNA results were still weeks away, but I didn't need them anymore. I had everything I needed to destroy both of them. The only question was how much collateral damage I was willing to accept. Friday morning brought a phone call that changed everything. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and completely unexpected. Mr. Merrinor, this is Dr. Patricia Chen from GeneTech Laboratories. I'm calling about the DNA samples you submitted. Already? I thought results took 6 to 8 weeks. Normally, yes, but your samples were flagged for priority processing due to some unusual markers we detected. My stomach dropped. What kind of unusual markers? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could you come to our facility this afternoon? Is something wrong? Mr. Merrinor, I think it would be best if we spoke face to face. I drove to the GeneTech facility in Albany, my mind racing through possibilities. What could be so unusual that they'd rush the results? What could be so sensitive that they wouldn't discuss it over the phone? Dr. Chen was a small, serious woman who led me to a private office filled with charts and computer monitors. Mr. Merrinor, I want you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is highly sensitive. These results raise questions that go beyond simple ancestry tracking. Just tell me. She opened a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. We processed 3 samples under your account. Yours, your wife's, and a third sample labeled as your daughter's. That's right. The relationship analysis shows some unexpected patterns. You are not the biological father of the child whose sample you submitted. Even though I'd been expecting this, hearing it confirmed felt like a physical blow. Are you certain? Absolutely. The genetic markers are completely incompatible. There's no possibility of paternal relationship. What about my wife's sample? She is definitely the biological mother, but there's something else. Dr. Chen pulled out another document. We ran additional tests when we detected the anomaly. The biological father shares significant genetic markers with you. What does that mean? It indicates the father is someone very closely related. From the genetic profile, it appears to be an immediate family connection, most likely a male relative from your household. The room felt like it was spinning. You can tell all that from a DNA test? Modern genetic analysis is quite sophisticated. We can determine relationships with a high degree of accuracy. She handed me a detailed report filled with charts and percentages. The science was complex, but the conclusion was simple. Ellie was my brother's daughter, not mine. How long ago would conception have occurred? Dr. Chen consulted her notes. Based on the genetic aging markers, approximately 20 years. 20 years. Ellie was 20, which meant Ayla had been cheating with Darren since before Ellie was born. Their affair wasn't a recent development. It had been going on for decades. There's one more thing, Dr. Chen said gently. Given the sensitivity of these results, we're required to ask, do you want us to prepare a formal legal document, something that could be used in custody or divorce proceedings? Yes, I want everything documented. She handed me a business card. Our legal department will prepare a comprehensive report. You should have it within 48 hours. I drove home in a daze. 20 years of lies. 20 years of raising another man's child, believing she was mine, loving her as my own daughter. 20 years of my brother looking at me with pity, knowing he'd stolen my wife and fathered my child. How many times had they laughed about it? How many times had they discussed their secret while I remained oblivious? When I got home, Ayla was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked up when I walked in, her face brightening with a smile that now seemed like mockery. How was your day? Educational. Something in my tone made her pause. Everything okay? Fine, just learned some interesting things about genetics. Her smile faltered. Genetics? Amazing what science can tell us these days. Paternity, family relationships, how long people have been lying. The color drained from her face. Zane? The DNA results came back early. She gripped the counter like she might fall down. What results? The ones you begged me not to send. The ones you threatened to divorce me over. I don't know what you're talking about. Ellie isn't my daughter. The words lingered heavily in the air. Ayla's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. 20 years, Ayla. 20 years you've been lying to me. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been screwing my brother since before Ellie was born. Please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been playing me for a fool my entire adult life? She started crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. Just cold, calculating rage. I love you, she whispered. No, you don't. You love Darren. you've always loved Darren. It's complicated. It's simple. You chose him over me 20 years ago, and you've been living a lie ever since. I pulled out my phone and called Darren. He answered on the first ring. Zane, is everything okay? Come over, now. We need to have a family discussion. I don't think that's a good idea. Come over, or I'll come to you. Either way, we're having this conversation tonight. I hung up and turned back to Ayla. She was still crying, mascara running down her cheeks. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to tell the truth, something you apparently never learned how to do. Darren arrived 20 minutes later, looking nervous and defensive. He took one look at Ayla's tear-stained face and seemed to understand that their secret was out. Zane, sit down. Let me explain. Sit down. He sat at the kitchen table across from Ayla. I remained standing, holding the DNA report like a weapon. Congratulations, I said. You have a daughter. Darren's face went white. What? Ellie. She's yours. Has been for 20 years. That's impossible. GeneTech Laboratories disagrees. They have charts and graphs and scientific proof that you're her biological father. Ayla reached across the table and grabbed Darren's hand. Even now, in the middle of being exposed, she turned to him for comfort instead of me. How long? I asked. They looked at each other, communicating silently. How long have you been together? Since high school, Ayla whispered. High school? We dated senior year, before you and I got together. And you never stopped. We tried. When you and I started dating, Darren and I agreed to end things. But you didn't. We did, for a while, but then what? Darren spoke up. Then you proposed, and she panicked. Panicked? She didn't know who she really loved, Darren continued, so we spent one last night together to say goodbye. The night Ellie was conceived. We didn't know, Ayla said quickly. I thought she was yours. The timing was close enough. But you suspected. Not until she got older. She looks like Darren, acts like him, and you never told me. What was I supposed to say? That I might have been pregnant with your brother's child when I married you? Yes, that's exactly what you should have said. It would have destroyed everything. Everything was already destroyed. You just made me live a lie for 20 years. I set the DNA report on the table between them. So what now? They looked at each other again, then back at me. We want to be together, Darren said quietly. After 20 years of sneaking around, you've decided to go public? We love each other, Zane. We always have. And Ellie? She's our daughter, Ayla said. We want to tell her the truth. Our daughter? She's been my daughter for 20 years. I raised her, paid for her education, walked her to her first day of school. Yeah, you'll always be important to her. I'll always be the man her mother lied to, the uncle who thought he was her father. The room fell silent. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Dorsey's dog barking, normal neighborhood sounds from a world that suddenly felt very far away. I want you both out of my house, I said finally. Zane, tonight, pack whatever you need and leave. We'll figure out the legal details later. Where are we supposed to go? I don't care. A motel, Darren's apartment, a cardboard box under the bridge. Just get out. They left an hour later, carrying hastily packed suitcases and 20 years of guilt. I watched from the window as they loaded Ayla's car, saw Darren put his arm around her shoulders, saw her lean into him for support. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. They looked like they belonged together. After they drove away, I sat in my empty kitchen and called Ellie. Dad, it's kind of late. We need to talk. Is everything okay? You sound weird. Can you come home this weekend? I guess. What's going on? I'll explain when you get here. Is Mom okay? Your mother is fine. She's with Darren. Uncle Darren? Why? Just come home, Ellie. There are things you need to know. I hung up and poured myself a drink. Then another. The house felt enormous and empty, filled with the ghosts of a family that had never really existed. Tomorrow, I'd start the divorce proceedings. I'd figure out custody arrangements and property division and all the legal complexities of untangling a 20-year lie. But tonight, I just sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out who I was supposed to be now that everything I'd believed about my life had turned out to be fiction. Saturday morning brought a knock at my door. I opened it to find Ellie standing on the porch, looking worried and confused. Dad? What's going on? Mom won't answer her phone and your message scared me. Looking at her now, with the truth fresh in my mind, I could see it clearly. The shape of her eyes, the way she gestured with her hands, the stubborn set of her jaw when she was determined about something. All Darren's features, inherited from a father she'd never known was her father. "Come in. We need to talk." She followed me to the kitchen where I'd laid out the DNA reports and legal documents. 20 years of lies spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. "Sit down, Ellie. You're freaking me out. Where's Mom?" "She's with Darren." "Okay, but why? And why do you look like someone died?" "Because someone did die. The person I thought I was." I handed her the DNA report. "Read this." She scanned the document, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to something approaching horror. This says you're not my biological father." "That's right. But that's impossible. You're my dad. You've always been my dad." "I've been the man who raised you, but I'm not your biological father." "Then who is?" I pointed to another section of the report. "According to the genetic analysis, your father is my brother." "Uncle Darren?" "Uncle Darren." She stared at the papers for a long time, reading and rereading the scientific data as if she could make it say something different. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday." "How long have they known?" 20 years. That hit her like a physical blow. 20 years? They've known my whole life? "Your mother says they weren't certain until you got older, but they suspected. And they never told us." "No, they never told us." Ellie pushed back from the table and started pacing around the kitchen. "So my whole life has been a lie. Not your whole life, just the part about who your parents are." "That's kind of a big part, Dad." "I'm not your dad." "Yes, you are." Her voice was fierce, angry. "You're the one who taught me to ride a bike. You're the one who helped with my math homework. You're the one who drove me to college and cried when you thought I wasn't looking. But I'm not your biological father." "So what? Biology doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up every day does." I felt something break inside my chest. This girl, this young woman who wasn't my daughter but would always be my daughter, was defending me against my own despair. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know. Your mother and Darren want to be together, officially." "What do you want?" "I want the last 20 years of my life back." "You can't have them. None of us can. So what do you want going forward?" It was a good question. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? A chance to start over? "I want the truth," I said finally. "I want everyone to know what really happened." "Everyone?" "Your grandparents, your friends, the whole town. I want them to understand what kind of people your mother and Darren really are." Ellie sat back down across from me. "And then what?" "Then I figure out how to build a life that isn't based on lies." "What about me? What about you? Do I fit into this new life you're planning?" The question caught me off guard. In all my anger and planning for revenge, I hadn't really considered how this would affect Ellie. She was as much a victim of this deception as I was. "Do you want to?" "You're the only father I've ever known. That doesn't change because of some DNA test." "Even though I'm technically your uncle?" "Even though." We sat in silence for a while, both of us trying to process the magnitude of what we'd learned. "I should call them," Ellie said eventually. "Your mother and Darren. I need to hear their side of this." "What side? They lied for 20 years. There might be more to the story." "There's always more to the story, Ellie. That doesn't make it right." She pulled out her phone and dialed. I could hear Ayla's voice when she answered, high and anxious. "Ellie? Oh, honey, I'm so glad you called. Is it true?" A pause. "Is what true?" "Is Darren my biological father?" Another pause, longer this time. "Who told you that?" "Dad showed me the DNA test results." "Ellie, it's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's a yes or no question. Yes, Darren is your biological father." Even though I'd known this was coming, hearing Ayla confirm it out loud felt like being punched in the stomach. "How long have you known?" Ellie asked. "We suspected for a long time, but we weren't certain until—" "How long?" "Since you were little, maybe 5 or 6 years old. And you never told me. We didn't know how. We didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me? You let me grow up thinking my uncle was my father and my father was my uncle. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Ellie's voice was getting louder, angrier. "You lied to me my entire life. We were trying to protect you. From what? The truth? From a complicated situation that would have been confusing and painful. More confusing and painful than finding out now?" Silence on the other end of the line. "I want to see you," Ellie said. "Both of you. We need to talk about this face to face." "Of course. When?" Now. Ellie, maybe you should take some time to process this. I've had 20 years to process it. I just didn't know what I was processing. She hung up and turned to me. They're coming over. I don't want them in my house. It's my house too, at least until we figure out what happens next. An hour later, Ayla and Darren arrived together. They looked like they hadn't slept, like they'd spent the night talking and crying and trying to figure out how to handle this situation. We sat in the living room, the four of us arranged like opposing armies, Ellie and I on one side, Ayla and Darren on the other. Explain, Ellie said without preamble. Ayla and Darren looked at each other, then Ayla began talking. Darren and I dated in high school. We were in love, or thought we were. When graduation came, we broke up because we were going to different colleges. But you didn't go to college, Ellie pointed out. No, I stayed here and got a job. Your father, Zane, asked me out a few months later. And you said yes, even though you were in love with Darren. I thought I was over Darren. Zane was sweet and stable, and everything I thought I wanted. But you weren't over Darren. No, I wasn't. Darren picked up the story. When Zane proposed, Ayla called me. She was confused, didn't know what to do. So you slept with her. We spent one night together, to say goodbye properly. The night I was conceived. We didn't know that at the time. The timing was close enough that when Ayla found out she was pregnant, she assumed Zane was the father. When did you figure out the truth? When you were about 5, Ayla said quietly. You started looking more like Darren, acting like him. We began to suspect. And you never told anyone. What were we supposed to do? Destroy 2 families based on a suspicion? You could have gotten a DNA test. And then what? If it confirmed our suspicions, everything would have been ruined. Everything was already ruined, I said. You just made us all live in the ruins without knowing it. We tried to stay away from each other, Darren said. For years we barely spoke. But you couldn't stay away. No, we couldn't. When did you start the affair? 2 years ago, Ayla admitted. After your high school graduation party. We were both emotional, remembering when you were little, thinking about how much time had passed. So you decided to pick up where you left off. We decided we couldn't keep pretending we didn't love each other. Ellie stood up and walked to the window. So let me see if I understand this. You two have been in love for over 20 years. You had an affair that resulted in my conception. You let Zane raise me as his daughter while carrying on a secret relationship. Then 2 years ago, you decided to make the affair official, but you still didn't tell anyone the truth. That's essentially correct. And you thought this was okay? We thought it was the best we could do in an impossible situation. Ellie turned around to face them. Did it ever occur to you that maybe honesty would have been better? That maybe Zane deserved to know the truth? That maybe I deserved to know who my real father was? We were trying to protect everyone. You were protecting yourselves. You were too cowardly to deal with the consequences of your choices, so you made everyone else live with them instead. The room fell silent. Outside, I could hear normal Saturday sounds. Lawnmowers, children playing, the ordinary noise of families who weren't falling apart. What happens now? Darren asked. Now you face the consequences, I said. All of them. What does that mean? I stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a manila envelope. Divorce papers, filed yesterday. The grounds are adultery and fraud. Ayla's face went white. Fraud? You used marital assets to fund your affair. That's financial fraud. Zane, please. I'm also filing for full disclosure of the paternity situation. Everyone's going to know the truth. You can't do that to Ellie. Ellie deserves to know who her real parents are. So does everyone else. Think about what this will do to our families. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how your families raised liars and cheaters. Darren stood up. That's enough. Is it? Because I'm just getting started. What do you want from us? I want you to understand what it feels like to have your world destroyed by people you trusted. We never meant for this to happen. You meant for all of it to happen. But you chose each other over everyone else, and now you get to live with that choice publicly. I handed Ayla the divorce papers. You have 30 days to respond. After that, everything becomes public record. They left a few minutes later, holding hands as they walked to their car. Even in the middle of being exposed, they had each other. Ellie and I watched them drive away. Are you really going to make this public? She asked. Yes. Even though it'll hurt me too? I looked at her, this young woman who'd been caught in the middle of a 20-year lie, who'd done nothing wrong but was going to suffer anyway. Do you want me to protect their secret? I want you to do what's right. What's right is the truth, even if the truth hurts people. Especially if the truth hurts people. That's how you know it matters. She nodded slowly. Then do it. Tell everyone. Let them face the consequences of what they've done. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm tired of living in a lie. So was I. After 20 years of deception, it was time for the truth to come out. All of it. The family gathering I organized for the following Sunday was supposed to be a simple post-holiday get-together. I'd invited both sets of parents, Ayla's sister from California, a few close family friends, everyone who mattered, everyone who deserved to know the truth. They arrived expecting leftover turkey and casual conversation. Instead, they found me standing in the living room with a stack of DNA reports and legal documents. Thank you all for coming, I began. I have some important family news to share. Ayla and Darren sat together on the couch, holding hands, looking like condemned prisoners waiting for execution. Ellie sat across from them, her face composed but determined. 20 years ago, Ayla and I got married and started what I thought was a family. Today, I learned that family was built on a lie. I handed out copies of the DNA report to Ayla's parents, to my own parents, to everyone in the room. These documents prove that Ellie is not my biological daughter. She's Darren's daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as understanding dawned on face after face, as 20 years of family history was rewritten in real time. Ayla's mother was the first to speak. This can't be right. It's been verified by 3 independent laboratories. The science is conclusive. But that would mean... She looked at her daughter with something approaching horror. That would mean you've been lying to us for 20 years. Mom, I can explain. Explain what? How you let us believe Zane was Ellie's father when you knew he wasn't? We didn't know for certain. You knew enough. My father's voice was quiet but firm. You knew enough to be honest. What followed was the kind of family confrontation that changes everything forever. Accusations, denials, tears, and finally, reluctant admissions of guilt. By the time everyone left, the truth was out completely. Ayla and Darren's 20-year deception was exposed, their affair was public knowledge, and the family they'd tried so hard to protect was irreparably damaged. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Ayla got nothing. The adultery and fraud charges saw to that. The house, the savings, even her car ended up being awarded to me as compensation for her financial deception. Darren lost his apartment when the story hit the local newspaper. Small towns don't forgive this kind of scandal easily, and his construction business dried up overnight. Last I heard, they'd moved to another state, trying to start fresh somewhere nobody knew their history. Ellie stayed with me. She legally changed her name to keep mine, saying that DNA doesn't make someone a father. Love and commitment do. She was right, of course. Biology had made Darren her father, but I was her dad. The country club fired Ayla, the investigation revealing not just the affair, but also the financial irregularities I'd helped expose. Mrs. Dorsey still waves at me from her kitchen window, though now she does it with the satisfaction of someone who always suspected something wasn't quite right. I kept the business running, even expanded it a little. Turns out honesty is good for business. People trust someone who tells the truth, even when it's painful. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never bought those DNA kits, if I'd let sleeping dogs lie and continued living the comfortable fiction Ayla and Darren had constructed. But I know the answer. The truth has a way of coming out eventually, and the longer you wait, the more damage it does when it finally surfaces. I gave them the choice to be honest. They chose deception instead, so I chose consequences, and I've never regretted it.